And the air pollution side of it, man, that's being completely ignored by everyone. No one's even asking them to think about that at all. So, just to quickly have folks understand how this works, here is another one of my very scientific charts showing what a natural gas system looks like. All right, so here is a countryside home in Pennsylvania. Here's a house. Here's your water supply here. So it's probably, I always forget to draw this when I'm on here. How do folks, anybody here from Northern PA? Like anyone from Northern PA? So how do folks up in Northern PA, most of them get their drinking water? Wells, yeah, they got personal wells, right, outside their house. Most of them get their drinking water from wells. So, you know, to be a little bit more accurate, if I drew a water well here, they don't actually have buckets on them anymore, but that's the icon that I'll use. So this is the, this was the aquifer, this is the groundwater supply, right? Then you've got bedrock, then you've got some dirtier water down here that's mixed up with coal. It's kind of nasty stuff. It's sort of a second water table. Oh, and then you've got a coal seam in there. And then if this were to scale, this house would be up there on the ceiling somewhere, and the actual natural gas would be all the way down on the floor. So you've got this gas rig that goes in, and the first thing that they do is they dig a hole down to a little below the water table, okay? They put a steel pipe down in there, and they run a concrete down the side of the steel pipe, and it goes all the way up to the top, and it seals it off. Now, this is a really important piece of the process, right? Because this is the part where you seal off the water supply, the groundwater supply, to, you know, protect drinking water, right? So this is really key, and this is really critical. And one of the things it says in Pennsylvania's oil and gas regs is, and there's a number of things that I'll go through here, but at different times over the course of a life of a well, a DEP inspector is supposed to come out and check and to make sure that everything's being done right. So they're supposed to make sure that all the regulations at that given stage in the process are done okay. And one of those times is at this point when you're cementing off the water supply. And it's really important, right, because if the cement doesn't sit long enough and doesn't get hard enough, it's not going to be able to protect the water supply. It's going to have failures in it. If you start running very powerful drills down in there that shake it up, it's going to have cracks form. And even the slightest failure is really dangerous. Now, if you're a natural gas driller and you're running a very, very expensive operation filled with highly paid laborers who are on site making $60, $100 an hour, it definitely pays to shave an hour or two off of the time you just let that drilling site sit. So it's very important to verify that you've let the cement sit there long enough to actually protect everyone, right? And so a lot of folks in West Virginia who believe their water has been corrupted by natural gas drilling believe this happens because they aren't letting the cement sit there long enough to get hard enough. And that's why we're saying DP should show up on site, especially at the moment of cementing. And there's a House bill out there right now, House Bill 2213, that would require them to show up. But all of those things that DP is supposed to show up and do, they have a get-out-of-jail-free card at the end of that list. It's if there isn't capacity to go at any of those times, you don't ever have to actually go. And right now we have something like, ProPublica is an investigative journalism site, and they've been tracking how many natural gas wells are in states and how many inspectors they have. And we have something like 100 inspectors for something like 5,000 permitted wells. We're not going to get to even close to all of these. And in fact, I don't think there's much evidence that we're visiting any of them right now. So, all right, so that's the first thing that happens. You dig a big hole down through the water supply. And actually, one of the things that some of the consultants we're working with have recommended is Pennsylvania is saying, right now, they just released some regulations saying, you got to dig down to 50 feet below the water supply. What New York is saying is you got to dig 100 feet down and into the bedrock, and if you don't reach a bedrock by 100 feet, you got to keep going. So, you know, I don't know why we're doing worse in New York, but whatever. So if we were in New York, we would go to there, so that's the bedrock. Then you dig another hole again. You have another steel tube that goes in there. You cement again to seal off the dirty water and maybe the coal seam. And then you go all the way down to the natural gas seam. Now, who knows, anyone here who knows why it is that we haven't developed this resource before? We've known this gas was there for 100 years. Yeah?
I think it had to do with the development of a fracking device that would go straight down but then go horizontally, and that technology has been developed just in the last few years?
Yeah,
Or something
so
like that?
directional drilling. So what that means is, here, we'll just slip back here really quickly. This is one of the things, and this is true, I mean, on some level the industry's right about this. This is kind of cool. You can dig one hole, you got a chunk of land, and then you can go down over here, 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 reach all kinds of different spots. You don't have to tear up quite as much land, right? It's kind of cool. It's good. Formations where it isn't as dense, one hole will get you to a lot more gas. So again, not really to scale, but say that this is enough gas to get profitable, right? This is so deep down that any given hole is only going to get like this much gas. So you got to get to more places. You got to be able to directionally drill. You got to open up more surface area. So there's one more piece of the technology that's important to mention. This directional drilling is one, and that's absolutely right. The other one is the thing everyone's heard about called hydraulic fracturing. So you dig a hole down, you bend it, you have more steel rods in there, and then you set off a series of charges. And the charges create fractures in the rock, and then at that point, I should have drawn this, this big pit here. If you guys have never seen one of these pits, if you're ever up in northern PA, you should definitely just go hunt down one of these sites and take a look at these things. They're really ugly. And they look like these gigantic black swimming pools with sort of like a garbage bag lining them, is sort of what they look like. They're all over the place, and so this is where a bunch of that water is, and they pump that water into the ground, and then it goes and it finds all these little fractures that the explosions make, and it goes in there and it makes all of those fractures bigger, right? Because the idea is to expose as much surface area of shale as possible to release the gas. So there's two things that are really important here, and they're really important understanding why this practice in this industry, if it isn't watched super closely, and if we don't have really strong regulations, and if we aren't watching them day in and day out, is really dangerous. The thing you have to remember is the whole purpose of this process, everything it's designed to do, is to make this water find little tiny holes and little tiny failures in very hard, very strong substances and make those holes and failures bigger. They're to break things up, right? And once you fill this hole with water and you put it in there at such pressure that's going to shatter rock a mile underground, it's not going to care if that little hole and that little failure is here, right by the water supply, or is a mile down underground where it can't do anything bad, right? It's not going to matter. So if we aren't watching super carefully, and if we aren't completely careful about making sure that every part of this process is done absolutely correctly, we really expose ourselves to some very nasty stuff.